In May 2019, 24 African countries deposited their instruments of ratification for the African Continental Free Trade Agreement after clearing key procedural hurdles. The Intra-Africa Trade aims to bring all 55 members of the African Union together in a single market of 1.2 billion people by removing trade barriers such as tariffs across the continent. The AfCTA is expected to boost regional trade and allow companies to expand and enter new markets. Africa's largest economy, Nigeria, came on board to sign the agreement on June 7, 2019, after pulling out initially on concerns by manufacturers that the country would be turned into a dumping ground. According to the International Monetary Fund, the elimination of tariff could boost trade in Africa by 15 to 25% in the medium term, and once fully implemented, is expected to cover all 55 African countries with a combined GDP of about 2.2 trillion US dollars. One of the objectives of the AfCFTA is to promote industrial development through diversification and regional value chain development, agricultural development, and food security. The agreement also aims to create a single market for goods, services, and movements of persons within the African continent. And one of the ways of achieving this is removing duties and taxes from goods produced within the continent. However, with many of the manufacturing companies sourcing a bulk of their raw materials externally, a restrictive rule of origin disallows the local industries to fully reap the benefit of free trade area. And with the historic trade set to commence in January 2021, after it was postponed as a result of the pandemic, manufacturers in Nigeria have raised fears on whether or not it will benefit from the trade. Joining me now live from our Abuja studios is a senior special assistant to the president on public sector, and is also the secretary, National Action Committee of the AfCFTA, that's Mr. Francis Anatogun. Thank you very much, Mr. Francis, for your time.
Thank you.
Now, we see clearly that Nigeria came on board to sign the agreement on July 7, 2019. That's after pulling out initially over concerns by manufacturers that the country would be turned into dumping ground. Now, how well do you think we've addressed these concerns raised?
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you for the introduction. You pretty much covered the topic. Now, I think it's not fair to just say the manufacturers. The stakeholders across board wanted to know what AfCFTA is about and how it will help Nigeria, and rightly so, because really it's a major program. Now, let us talk about the concerns that they raised. One of the concerns, like you mentioned, is, do we have the products that we're going to sell in Africa? The second concern, will we be competitive enough? The third concern is, we witness smuggling and dumping within ECOWAS region, and now we're opening to the 55 African countries. Aren't we opening too much? So these are the concerns. But at the same time, every single one of them recognize the benefits of the AfCFTA. As a nation, we recognize that we need to diversify away from oil. As a nation, we understand that for us, we need to improve our export. We need to grow our export, which is what we need to do to grow our GDP, create jobs. So, back to your question on how have we addressed the issues. What we found is that, on one hand, starting from the issue of dumping. Now, there are specific actions that we are supposed to have taken, even when we joined the WTO and when we started the external, ECOWAS external, common external tariffs, which is creation of a trade remedies mechanism. Now, that is one thing that we've identified that we need to do, and we've started taking action at the National Action Committee to define, to put steps. We have steps in place to ensure that we have that trade remedies mechanism in place. We're starting with some short-term measures, and then we'll move on. Eventually, we will have to submit a bill to the National Assembly to back it up by an act. That is one thing. There has to be some kind of an early warning system, which is understanding the trade flows in Africa, the 55 countries in Africa, such that when you see spikes in any product, you can easily then tell that there's something happening and you can take action. It is also important to mention that we, being in ECOWAS, we've been part of a customs union. We have been running the ECOWAS trade liberalization scheme. So we understand how to deal with or how to operate a preferential trade agreement. So we are even in a better position than a number of African countries. Yes, the ECOWAS trade liberalization scheme, the ETLS, it's not perfect, but we understand where the gaps are, and we need to take actions. And already actions have been taken, but there are specific actions that need to be taken to make sure that we close the gap. It is also important to mention that even as trade will start on the 1st of January 2021, the implementation will take a longer time. In the immediate term, there are negotiations around what we're going to liberalize and what we're not going to liberalize. But even when that is agreed, we then have to code them in our tariff book, like every other countries. We then need to have bilateral discussions in terms of what to give to each country and so on, the bilateral discussions. And then that in itself will take time. So when we say trade is starting on the 1st of January, it does not mean that you turn on the light bulb and things just start to roll. Another key point to note is that the preferential trade will not be automatic, and that's where your rules of origin come in. You will have to prove that your products meet the rule of origin criteria. And that requires a number of documentation to prove that. So essentially, it is important to say that it is work in progress, but the value that we get from AfCTA outweighs the risks, given the inherent capabilities that I mentioned before. What are these values?
Okay, allow me butt in here now before you talk about, you've told us that it's a work in progress and how ready we are. Well, I'm still looking at how competitive our manufacturing sector. I'm still focusing on it because that's part of the sectors that will really, face all of these issues. Now, we're looking at a market that is about will bring 30 million people out of extreme poverty with what we've seen from the World Bank, and also saying that incomes of about 68 million others will live less than 5.5%. So that means the impact will be so much. Now, do you think we need to look at the structure of trade across the continent to also make this become a reality with all of these goodies that you've also highlighted with regards to AfCFTA?
Okay, so two things to note. Africa imports about $650 billion of products, mostly manufactured products, on an annual basis. Nigeria wants to industrialize. So here you have a market that needs that meets your aspiration. You're going into Africa without paying duties. So that gives you advantage over products that will come from outside Africa. So really, it looks like it's a win-win situation. Now, from 2016 to now, the Naira, the rate of devaluation of Naira is maybe around 90%, right? So from from a business perspective, how do you stop the value erosion? The way to do that is by exporting whatever you're even producing today to Africa, because that gives you exposure to other currencies. But besides that, from the study that we did when we did the impact and readiness assessment study, the Nigerian products will even command higher margins in Africa. And already we have products going from Nigeria to various parts of Africa. The other point to note is that you've mentioned manufacturing, but it's not just manufacturing. You have manufacturing, but services contribute over 50% to the Nigerians' GDP.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, so part of what we need to do with AfCTA, and it was even clear at the recent AfCTA agricultural strategy workshop that we had. So we need to play to our strength. Our banks are all over Africa as we speak. Our movies are all over Africa as we speak. There's a lot of informal transborder trade going on as we speak. Our products are going into Africa, even manufactured products. So what we need to do is amplify this trade, because as individuals and as companies, our problem is about production. We need to increase production. The sustainable way to do it is through export, because that's what you're attracting forex pretty much. So that is one thing you need to keep in mind. So everybody really, to maintain the value of your wealth, you need to have some exposure to foreign currency or foreign trade.
On this, now, how well would you say Nigerians are being educated with regards to all of these benefits highlighted? How well? Yes, you've talked about services, a lot of jobs will be created. We've looked at all of these positives, but how well would you say your committee or who's responsible on educating Nigerians so that they can totally take advantage of this?
So it's still early days. We've started engaging via virtual media. We've had our first stakeholder consultation, sensitization on the 24th of September. We've been having a series of workshops, which in itself is sensitization. But in terms of rolling out on a nationwide basis, that is still an area where we're planning to do, and taking into consideration the COVID restrictions. But we have started. We started back in January, February. We started engaging industry associations like NASIMA. We've been engaging with Manufacturers Association. We've been engaging with ministries, departments and agencies of government at the federal level. We still need to take it down to the states. Even within the private sector, even within these associations that I mentioned, we still need to take it down to all of them. But the key thing is that we have started. We will continue to ramp up, but the message has started going out, and we need to continue on that path.
That definitely means that this discussion too must always continue. I must thank you, Mr. Francis Anatogu, Secretary, National Action Committee on the AfCTA, and also Senior Special Assistant to the President, Public Sector. Thank you for spending your afternoon with us on Business